Welcome to the final week of the PGA Tour season. It all comes down to this. All those events way back in the fall, all through the summer, the spring, the swing seasons, the coastal swings, all of that comes down to the Tour Championship at East Lake Golf Club. There are tons of quirks. Well, I guess not tons, but there are quirks due to the format this week with modified scoring entering the weekend. We have golfers starting as low as 10 under par, with last week's winner, Patrick Cantlay, breaking records with his putting. Tony Finau 8 under, Bryson DeChambeau 7 under, Jon Rahm 6 under. And so that's kind of why these guys separate themselves in terms of the betting odds, but we'll get there. I need to intro the show first. This is the FanDuel PGA Q&A for this week's PGA Tour event. I'm your host, Brandon Gdula, managing editor over at numberFire.com. You can find all my content over there for the Tour Championship. I have win simulations. I have my FanDuel DFS picks. I got a course primer going over the course, some hole-by-hole stuff in terms of length. Key stats, all that is over at numberFire.com. And then as always, Jim Sonis and I go over the field in our Heat Check Daily Fantasy podcast that comes out every Tuesday morning. There's a lot to go over this week in terms of game theory because of the modified start for this week's event. So if you have any questions, because this is a Q&A format, get those in on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, or Twitch. And they can be about my win simulations. They can be about game theory, the course, whatever you would like, because this is the Q&A. I'm here to answer whatever questions you have. So I'm going to start, as I always do, by going over the field, getting kind of a lay of the land in terms of who's here and what that means. And of course, this is the Tour Championship. So we're down to the final 30 for this week. Jon Rahm, Patrick Cantlay, the co-favorites at plus 380 to win outright on FanDuel Sportsbook. Bryson DeChambeau 5-1, Tony Finau plus 650, and then a huge teardrop to Justin Thomas at 18-1. DJ, Rory, Cam Smith all 22-1, and so that goes back to that top four. We really have to figure out what we're doing with those guys this week. Again, Patrick Cantlay, incredible win. Good for us. We were in on Patrick Cantlay. Hopefully you joined in on that last week. Just a phenomenal playoff putting performance, really 4 rounds of just the best putting we've basically ever seen since we've had strokes gained data. He's going to start 10 under. So that gives him a 2-shot lead over everybody else. He doesn't have a 10-shot lead on the field. Like, it's not quite how it works, obviously, but 2 shots better than Tony Finau, again, who's plus 650, 3 shots over Bryson at plus 500, and then 4 shots over Jon Rahm. But despite that, Jon Rahm listed as a co-favorite with Patrick Cantlay. And that might sound a little crazy, but it's really not, and we'll get there. But I'm going to jump into the actual course first so we kind of know what it is we're looking for this week. But again, if you have any questions, hit up that YouTube chat, Facebook, Twitter, or Twitch. But for now, I'm going to go over some key stats, some key info for East Lake Golf Club. I'm going to jump over to the GCSAA page. This just has, the kind of nitty gritty about the course. It's a par 70. We're going to run us 7,300 on almost 50 yards there. Average green size, just over 6,000 square feet, which is about average for the PGA Tour, at least in my database. Has about 50 of the most common courses. 50 of the most recent courses, I should probably say, but a lot of the more common ones popping up in there, obviously. So about average green size, and those greens are Bermuda for this week. So if you're looking into putting splits, which I definitely do recommend with, so much variance for, putting, it never hurts to separate out, especially with just 30 golfers, to look at who the best Bermuda putters are. And we can go over some of them. Based on the data from Fantasy National. There have been some renovations here recently, 2008, 2016, but back in 2020, they removed some of the trees. We talked about that a little bit on the Heat Check podcast earlier today on Tuesday. That didn't really change a whole lot for what we're kind of honing in on, and what should we be honing in on at East Lake? Well, I like to start here with this data golf tool that shows variation in scoring. 34% of the variation in scoring comes from strokes gained approach, so your irons, compared to 15.6% for off the tee and 14% around the green, which is basically tour average for all of those stats. And then putting just a tiny bit more in terms of what explains scoring dispersion at East Lake. So for me, that means iron play is crucial because it is the most important. You combine off the tee and around the green stuff approach virtually always, outweighing both of those in terms of how guys actually separate. For the event at East Lake. Now, if you look here, you'll see that Dustin Johnson won a year ago despite posting an 11 under score, and Xander Schauffele was runner up at 15 under. That's because DJ won the net competition. He started 10 under. Xander won the gross 72 hole competition, which matters for official World Golf rankings, but not for your FedEx Cup and your purse there. But Xander, great performance in 2020, and he also had a great performance back in 2019, finishing runner-up only to Rory McIlroy. And Xander has the best form at East Lake, according to Data Golf, which adjusts for field strength. Rory McIlroy is up there too. Justin Thomas as well. And then Billy Horschel, who is minimum salary. And Billy Horschel has some interest for me because this is, again, we got Bermuda greens, which he's good on, but also, according to Data Golf, driving accuracy gets a pretty sizable boost over the tour average for this week's event. So hitting fairways typically not always enough for a PGA Tour events, but at East Lake we have seen that matter. Horschel, good at finding fairways, good at putting on Bermuda, so it makes sense that he gets a bit of a boost here. And if you look at the relative importance of these stats this week, everything's kind of downgraded aside from accuracy. Now, that doesn't mean that we just want to roster the most accurate golfers. There's more to it than that. But golfers who are not long off the tee aren't necessarily cross-offs for this week, which is good news because we only have 30 golfers. And Patrick Reed may or may not play. I don't quite know yet. And we have Stuart Sink in the field, so probably 29 or 28 golfers. But that's good news for someone like Billy Horschel. One of the coolest things about this course fit tool for Data Golf is they show who gets the biggest boost at a particular course playing in that field that week. Corey Connors, number one, because he's hyper accurate, not long at all. Colin Morikawa, super accurate, somewhat long, but definitely someone who finds a lot of fairways. Same with Abe Answer, Sungjae Im, Billy Horschel, and Victor Hovland. So I'm going to stick actually with Sungjae and Horschel just because they kind of fit something that I was starting to overlook, because 30 golfers, you're looking at the starting scores and how that affects things. But for me, I mean, you got to realize it's still a fairway finders course, and it's a Bermuda course. And at any other week, we would be bumping up Sungjae Im, who had a great showing last week with that third place finish, and also Billy Horschel, because they kind of hit those specialist checklists. Also, same for Daniel Berger to some degree, as just a good Bermuda putter who benefits from a fairway finders course. And then also Harris English, who doesn't quite get a boost here, but someone who you would typically want to bump up in those conditions. I have a question here on YouTube from Clint. Should I load up with top tier in one value play or spread it out? That's a great question. So I went back through the past two optimal lineups from the Tour Championship since we've had, and forgive me, these aren't formatted great. I just kind of threw them together. But I went through the past two optimals we've had since we have turned over to this modified start format. And if the question is a balanced approach or, top and bottom heavy, it has skewed a little bit more top and bottom heavy for these optimals. In 2019, I'll just filter more specifically so we can kind of see that. We had Brooks Koepka, Rory McIlroy, and Xander Schauffele starting in the top 6 in terms of their starting score. And then Adam Scott, Paul Casey at 3 and 2 under, and then Chez Reavie starting 1 under. So he was that tied for 21st. So it was, 2 to 3 of the studs, and then virtually three value plays. And then in 2020, we had Dustin Johnson, who was salaried at $14,400. We don't have anyone like that this year. He would be, but DJ was super hot in 2020, entering the 2020 Tour Championship. He held on to win the net competition. Xander started way back at 3 under, and he ended up winning that 72-hole gross scoring competition. JT was up there, but again, we had that one of those value plays starting. We had Ches Reavie at 1 under, and then we have Mackenzie Hughes starting at even par. So if you basically look, we've got 2-ish studs, and then 2 to 3 golfers in that like 11 to 16, and then just the one value golfer. Now, one thing that's important to keep in mind is that for one value golfer to get in the optimal lineup in a format like this, we're kind of just cherry picking because 10 of the 30 golfers would fit into that bucket. So 20 of the 60 golfers here over the past 2 years, and just one of them each made it. So, it is possible to have these guys climb. And that's what we've seen in the optimal lineups, but you don't want to get too overconfident with too many low end guys starting at, 1 under par or even par. But with the great value plays that we do have this year, I'm pretty drawn to it. But I'm going to say at least one value play kind of makes a lot of sense for this week. And then just because I have this here, just a bit of a snapshot. We've actually seen, DJ win at 10 under the actual event, and then Rory back in 2019 win. But it was Rory and Xander who led in FanDuel points. So it's just a reminder that, we want to probably lock in Jon Rahm and Patrick Cantlay at the top. Clint's asking me who my 2 studs are, and it's Jon Rahm and Patrick Cantlay because they're hyper accurate for some of the bigger hitters. And I'll feature them in just 1 second. But you don't know that Cantlay. So this would be Cantlay, Finau, Bryson, Rahm. This would be Cam Smith. You don't have to assume that those guys are going to lead the field in FanDuel points. Most likely they are because they get that advantage, but that's not necessarily the case. Someone like Rory made the surge. We do see that, these golfers typically do finish well. I would say the small sample here, I'm not saying avoid Tony Finau because he's 8 under and avoid Jon Rahm because he's 6 under and they haven't typically ranked that well. That's just a sample size thing. If I bucketed these, it would look a little bit more consistent, but you typically see some chalk outside of the heavy favorites. So you're going to expect probably, the top 4, not just Cantlay and Rahm, but also Bryson, possibly Tony Finau to be pretty significantly popular on FanDuel. But from the scoring perspective, you want birdies and you want guys who can climb. So we have those in the field this week. So because I mentioned my 2 studs, that's a great question from Clint. I'm going to jump over to my finder here that has the top 5 guys in terms of FanDuel salary for the week. Really, it's these 4, and then it's a teardrop to JT at 11.5. He's starting, 4 under par. Cantlay again 10 under, which it seems like an impossible gap to make up. And I did kind of promise that I would explain why Jon Rahm starting 4 shots back and having a higher salary is still justifiable. It's because, this here, he's about 0.7 shots per round better than Cantlay over the past year in my database, which adjusts for recency and field strength. If you kind of narrow that down to 6 months or 3 months, he's at least a shot, 1.25 shots better than Cantlay. So Rahm kind of has just the best path to cashing in his floor and ceiling, I would say, even though Cantlay is starting out ahead. So for me, Rahm is the number 1 play, followed by Cantlay. Now I know they're the 2 highest salary golfers in the field. That's okay because I don't really want to chase Bryson too much or Tony Finau, who Bryson's actually in the 0th percentile. So it is just a spreadsheet error here, but these guys all pretty poor in terms of hitting fairways. And again, so there's a lot more to driving than just hitting fairways. We know Bryson doesn't care about that. He's going to gain distance, obviously best longest driver in the field, but you can get distance from Jon Rahm. You can get distance to some degree from Patrick Cantlay, and also have some semblance of fairways hit. So jumping back actually to data golf, Bryson DeChambeau gets the biggest negative boost for this week. Followed, Jordan Spieth up there too at a negative 0.2. DJ, Finau, JT, Brooks also getting a bit of a negative impact. And yes, Patrick Cantlay is down there. I understand that, but Jon Rahm basically baseline here, which is why Jon Rahm for me just is the number one once you account for the course that they are playing on. Clint is asking roster Louis Oosthuizen. So I'm probably not going to. We haven't seen Louis. He's been withdrawing. I don't think you have to, because we have so many options here, and it's actually been hard to narrow things down. So the players in green are the ones that I'm most heavily targeting. But for Louis, I mean, he rates out well in this one number stat here. It's what I call my combo model. It takes into account your long-term form over the past year, which again weights for recency and field strength. It looks at the stats that I'm weighting in for this week. Louis, really good putting right now, not so good off the tee. And it accounts for this week for your starting position. So I would say Louis is a great tournament play, but for me, process-wise, I would much rather just play or Morikawa, find that salary. Or if you really can't, I'm cool going down to Sungjae Im, who I was lukewarm on at best. Honestly, I know I'm kind of saying that I was in on Sungjae. I really wasn't, because I didn't look close enough at the numbers, but his ball striking is trending up. But I also like Brooks Koepka a ton, because first place, $15 million. Brooks, this isn't a major, but I think that, chasing down everyone would really do wonders for Brooks and his mentality, because, and I don't really typically talk about that stuff. I look just more at the data, but Brooks has been on record and just said, like, he doesn't really try that hard sometimes, and it takes the right event for Brooks to be totally engaged. I don't know what else could really, make you be engaged other than these giant checks at the top of the leaderboard. So I would say Brooks, Sungjae, Morikawa, and Hovland all over Louis for me, just because of the unknown. And I would have to think that Louis is a top tier elite tournament play, because everybody's probably thinking the same thing I am, just trying to stay away from Louis for this week. Question on Facebook from Ralph, best option in bottom 10. So kind of a lot for this week. So bottom 10 specifically is Hideki on down, but I'm going to go with Daniel Berger. I think Sergio Garcia is very much in play, but I will highlight Daniel Berger here. Actually, I'll go Connors, Berger, Neiman. I'll just do. I don't need to pull up everyone, but it's going to be Daniel Berger for me. I threw this in here, so the formatting's rough, so forgive me on that. But Daniel Berger for me, and then Corey Connors as well. So Berger starting at even par, doesn't really have a lot of win juice, as Jim and I like to say. But elite tee to green, I would say that we can count this as elite. This is one of the few weeks where percentiles may be a little bit more confusing, because it's only 30 golfers, but I'm not changing around the whole sheet. Elite iron play, and that's what you want to see always. And he's someone who, again, if this were a larger field, maybe a fewer studs. So, like, let's say Planet East Lake, full field, not necessarily all of the superstars. You'd say, hey, Daniel Berger hits fairways, and he putts well on Bermuda. I know he's only 55th percentile here over the past 100 rounds, but gains 0.15, which you definitely would enjoy. And I'm going to pull up Data Golf's true strokes gained query, because over the past 3 months, Berger is 9th in their true strokes gained, which is their adjusted strokes gained, which is, I have my own, but this sometimes is just a little bit easier to pull because of the sortable time frame here. But 3rd tee to green, 2nd in approach for him. And if you even scale that back to the past 6 months, which is a larger sample, which is what we should probably trust, still rates out well, 7th there in tee to green, 2nd in approach. And he's a good putter, but he hasn't really been putting particularly well. Screams regression. I know that he's got a lot of ground to make up, but again, going back over those optimal lineups, we've seen golfers in that in that value tier with 1 under and starting at even par just make a surge. And there's really no reason that can't be Daniel Berger. And a lot of that also kind of applies to Sergio Garcia. Great tee to green, put it together with a putter last week, which is not something you can always bank on. But I would say Connors right up there as well. We just have these good ball strikers. So I'm going to say Berger first, Connors, Garcia for me are the top 3 in the bottom 10 for this week. Okay, so one tier that I have not particularly honed in on from a discussion standpoint, because again, my favorite studs this week are Rahm and Cantlay, for sure, because of the fairways that they hit, and just my win simulation model prefers them pretty substantially once you factor in the winning or the starting scores for them. I'm kind of dangerously going to be underexposed to this elite tier here, just because I don't think anyone's really over salaried this week, but I do think that not everyone is as good of a value. Like there's not one golfer I would say, because at the top, if you just sort by salary, you see Rory and Xander are the 2 outliers in terms of their starting score. So we're not seeing, anyone like an Abe Answer. He is not 11-9 just because he's 4 under, anything like that. So I don't really see a whole lot of like complete obvious stayaways. I think everyone is kind of salaried fairly, but this tier here, and I kind of touched on it with Louis, like I have almost interest in every one of these golfers. So I'm sure Louis, who I've been on plenty, is going to be the one out of here who just goes nuts. But Abraham Answer ranks 3rd in my stats, form combo model, whatever you want to call it here. Again, great fairways number, one of the most accurate drivers we have. Good putter on Bermuda. It's not elite, but it's still a positive number, which is what you want to see. Harris English, someone else that you would want to target. Again, bump up on a course that rewards fairways hit and putting on Bermuda. Sam Burns, not super accurate, but an elite Bermuda putter. Hasn't really shown any reason to be concerned for me. And he's starting 4 under. Colin Morikawa, Victor Hovland. Like you can build a balanced lineup this week. That's not what the optimals have really shown. Now the optimals are, especially with golf, notoriously nitpicky, because if you take a chance on these 9 guys or whatever, odds are one of them is gonna go off. But if you guess wrong on the 3 that you pick, it's gonna be a struggle potentially to make up ground. But for me, I'm again focusing on Rahm and Cantlay. I'm going to probably roster 1 golfer per lineup in this tier, specifically, again, the guys highlighted, and then you probably also throw Billy Horschel in there, and then round it out with this tier rather than trying to get back up to the Rory, Spieth, DJ, JT, Finau, Bryson tier for this week. Again, if you guys have any other specific questions, just let me know in the YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch chats. Number 2, my win simulation model, which the odds are all they're all kind of weird here, because we have favorites at plus 380. The model hates Bryson, it just does for this week. For me, I think it's because Bryson gets dinged a lot at a course that doesn't demand distance. And I talk about this a lot anytime we see a course where driving accuracy gets rewarded. That just naturally increases variance because for the sole fact that the shorter hitters aren't disqualified. Like they're not losing strokes to the field automatically just by being short. So you're just ingesting more golfers with a chance to win. And then if you go back and look at the gross scores, so without that net adjustment, we've seen historically these like 12 under to 15 under, and that's enough scoring to keep these golfers in the mix. It's whenever courses play close to par that you see the best separate because they got to grind it out hole after hole. So Eastlake doesn't really rate out that way. So for me, Bryson is a clear avoid. Same for Finau. I love Tony Finau, but I'm just not going to get there. I think he's overvalued. The model thinks he's overvalued because of that 8 under start. Rom a little bit undervalued, but it's Patrick Cantlay with that 4-shot lead who just wins a quarter of the time based on the simulation. So I can kind of get behind that, which is why, again, that also is playing into why I like Cantlay and Rom specifically. And I think that they're not necessarily overvalued compared to Finau and Bryson, who definitely get dinged from a course setup standpoint. I like Cam Smith, even though he's basically a break-even value for me in the model. Cam Smith starting 5 under. We can see him make a lot of birdies, 97% rate gained over the past 50 rounds. On tour, I'd have interest in Abe Answer as well, Victor Hovland, but one name that's going to rate out poorly, probably, having looked, is Brooks Koepka. Brooks always rates out poorly in the model because it factors in all of his rounds, and Brooks, again, is not always engaged in his rounds, and he says that. So I'm probably going to cap it here at like 50-1. Just the win equity of the golfers. I mean, it's always fun to talk yourself into, a 100-1 Scotty Scheffler, but I'm not going to do that this week with my outrights. I'm fine betting someone like Scheffler as a top 10, but not for an outright for me for this week. It just doesn't necessarily make sense because if you go back and look, it's not that they got to run down just Patrick Cantlay. It's, again, I'm not super in on Tony Finau and Bryson, but they're up there. Rom, Cam Smith, this tier at 4 under, you got to get past them. So for me, I'm going to try to keep it a little bit more, from 50 and shorter in terms of my outright win bets. But Cam Smith for sure, probably going to be where I start my, again, my model says there's value on Patrick Cantlay. I'm probably not going to bet that at plus 380 very often. Just the way that I am, I'm going to start my card with Cam Smith most likely. I would consider Jordan Spieth, but he gets dinged pretty heavily at this course as well. So I'm not super in on the idea of anchoring lineups to Jordan Spieth. But Morikawa, Victor Hovland, definitely some longer shots without getting too crazy. Again, Xander made a push. Rory won from 5 under as well. So I think that we don't necessarily have to feel locked in to these top 4 guys with our win bets or even our FanDuel lineups. But again, I am kind of locking myself in to a lot of Jon Rahm and Patrick Cantlay for this week. But and one thing I wanted to pull up was just some golfers who rank well in terms of fairways gained. So we'll do at least 50th percentile in fairways gained, and then Bermuda putting. Actually, I'll just sort by this, and we'll see who kind of is at least field average accurate and the best Bermuda putters. Billy Horschel, Harrison. So again, these 3 that I mentioned already. Patrick Reed would make some sense if we knew he was fully healthy. And Xander, someone who I have kind of overlooked in this Q&A format, but I like Xander starting at 2 under. We've seen him make a run. And according to Fantasy National, he's gained strokes on the field in all 16 of his rounds here. Next best rate is Rory McIlroy at 79%. So Xander, someone I didn't talk about a lot, but I'm going to play a lot of, I think. I think he's going to be kind of a differentiation piece for me. And again, that means not getting back up to like the JTs and Rorys, but instead kind of getting back up to Xander, Hovland, Morikawa, Abe Answer, and guys in that range. So that's going to do it for me. We're going to switch over to the MLB version of the show, and that does mean bringing on Jim Sonis so that he can break down.
Don't sound so sad about it. Come on.
Well, I was gonna be disparaging, but I didn't want to.
Why not, bro?
I don't want. I was gonna because I was talking to Joy before the show, and I said that I always like when Jim's on because it makes me feel like he's going to handle anything that comes up, and then I don't have to be kind of facing it myself. But I would never say it to your face. I think you're a wonderful person, great co-host, but I would just never tell you that.
I'm glad that you're here too, because my glorious spreadsheets got screwed up, and so I am in the process.
Yes, we secretly do love Jim. Just we can't tell him that.
Yeah, no, never tell anyone that. I screwed up my spreadsheet somehow. I don't know when. At some point, and I got it back. So I'm actually going to pull these up here because I want you to see before you go away. Because I had messed up. Like the percentiles were showing up as decimals. It was pretty terrible. But hey, they're back. I know that you were worried that you might not get to see the neon green, but it's here, Brandon. It's just for you, ready to go.
We need to vote for who has the better spreadsheet.
I don't want to vote on that. I'm a fragile man, and I'd rather not know what the people think about this. So
Joy is neutral.
I'm using my veto powers on this, and I say no. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I mean, mine can be busy. There's a lot I try to have on here, but it was never fully designed to be shared. It was just kind of for me. But then no, I don't care. Nothing.
See, I made this
nothing is worse than
to be displayed.
Yeah, nothing is
might make it worse that it's this color, but
yeah,
whatever.
I don't know if any spreadsheet can be worse than that, but
we'll see. But if it wins this money, Brandon,
but you have great info, and that's what matters.
Exactly. That is why we are here. That is Brandon Gdula. Check him out on Twitter at Gdula13. Check out all of his stuff up at numberFire.com, and check out our Heat Check Fantasy Podcast, talking more PGA DFS. Well, Brandon, good luck to you this week. Talk to you later, except in our bobblehead. Now that he's gone, I can trash talk him and say, I hope he does not win our bobblehead. That is the one requirement, our head-to-head for this week. This is the MLB DFS Q&A right here on the FanDuel YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, and Twitter channels. My name is Jim Sonis. I am a senior writer and analyst for numberFire.com. Here to take your questions for the next half hour. No matter where you are watching, get those questions in on YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, or Twitter. We'll take them no matter where you're watching and get you set for today's slate of MLB DFS. Let's start things off with Michael over on YouTube. Michael says Brad Peacock is starting for Boston for today. I was thinking it might be Peacock or Garrett Richards. Peacock just came over. He was... I don't even know if he's pitched this year in the big leagues, but he's now with Boston. Yeah, he's not pitched in the big leagues yet so far this year. So off to a rockin' start there. Let's see what the minor league numbers look like for Peacock. Obviously, in the past has been a pretty good pitcher, but there's probably a reason he was not in the majors. Oh my goodness. A 7.68 ERA in AAA, 5.16 xFIP. Mostly because a lot of fly balls in there for Peacock, and I'm guessing a lot of line drives too, which will drive up your xFIP. So Peacock has struggled. I will say, Michael, though, I would expect this to be a bullpen game for the Red Sox. Maybe they let go, but they let Peacock kind of go full out here. Let's see what his minor league game logs look like. So he did pitch on the 27th, which means he's on 3 days rest, if my math is correct. Had 7 strikeouts there, so that's not too bad. But either way, I'd expect this to be like a 2-ish inning thing for Peacock. Let's see what the usage has been recently for Garrett Richards. I know he's been a lot better in the bullpen than he was as a starter. And then we'll see what Richards' length has looked like, because I'm assuming he'll be in there at some point for today. Okay, Richards hasn't pitched since Saturday, so I'd assume it'll be Peacock followed by Richards. Let's look at Richards here and how he's done while he's been in the bullpen, because I'm pretty sure he's been good in there. All right, let's go here to here. So as a reliever, Richards, 12 strikeouts in 10 1/3 innings, 0.87 ERA. The strikeout rate in that time for Richards is 29.3%. That's pretty good. 11.5% swing and strike rate. So that's actually not a bad setup to go from Peacock to Richards. I wouldn't expect the thing with Peacock to go well, but Richards should do well when he's in there. So I would say the Rays are a solid option, but not like a must-have option, just because I think that Richards will be in there. I think he's been pretty good. I think that they'll do well against Peacock. So the Rays are okay, but not a priority. Hopefully that answers your question there. Michael, let's talk to DJ. Cole Irvin, Zach Plesac, or Zach Gallen. Hard pass in the first two. I have no interest at all in Irvin or Plesac. Both those guys do not get strikeouts. I can't use them, but Gallen is pretty good. I don't mind him at all. I think he's my favorite guy. Below $9,000, Gallen's facing the Padres, so a tough matchup in theory, but obviously, they've struggled recently. They're still a low strikeout team with a 21% strikeout rate, but we saw guys like Aaron Nola handle them, Max Scherzer handled them, so we can use guys against them if they're good enough. And Gallen has been, I know the results aren't good, but the peripherals are good. 28% strikeout rate over his past 7 starts. So I don't mind Gallen. I will say, though, my priority on this slate is trying to find ways to get up to the higher salary pitchers. So we're talking here Walker Buehler, Lucas Giolito primarily. Also, Blake Snell and Lance McCullers are interesting. So although Gallen's my favorite of those options, my favorite guy below 9,000, he's still going to be a lower exposure play for me today. I think that the optimal way to play things today is to try to get to the stud pitchers. Let's talk to Kyle. I really like my lineup, but it only leaves me 2.3 thousand at third base. Do I quote unquote punt this position or switch up my stacks? It depends on what you can get from punting. I'll look at the options in the second here, Kyle, but just as a broad point, if you're using a player who does not have a realistic ceiling, then I would say try to rearrange things, because you all might remember this. There was a situation a couple years ago where Kike Hernandez was accidentally $20 or $220 on FanDuel as opposed to like $2,200. And I saw a lot of people saying that they wanted to use Kike Hernandez for that game, even if he didn't start, because they wanted the salary savings. But like, that's not really the way you want to view things. The way that I want to view things is every hitter that I have is a chance to identify a player who can score me 40 points. If I use a player who can't get me there, then I'm taking 8 shots versus 9 shots, or 7 shots versus 8 shots, et cetera, et cetera. I'm giving myself fewer cracks at having a slate busting type guy, having a guy who can erase the mistakes I make elsewhere. So in general, if it's a true punt, a guy who is not going to do anything for you, avoid it and reconfigure. But let's look at today specifically, see if there are any guys here down at $2,300 or lower at third base who we can feel good about. Tommy La Stella got scratched last night. It's a side injury. That's always kind of a red flag, because that can mean it's an oblique type thing. Obliques can linger. Those can lead to saps and power. So La Stella also facing Brandon Woodruff, which means we don't want to go there. Matt Duffy is facing John Gant today. Don't really want exposure to the Cubs, so don't really want to go there. Let's see if there's anyone else here projected to start. Lower salary third baseman. Not seeing a whole lot there, Kyle. So if you see someone you're interested in, Kyle, put it in the chat. We'll try to talk more in depth about them. But for right now, I'd probably be trying to reconfigure to get a little bit higher for your third baseman for tonight. John, how would you stack the Phillies for the main slate? Okay, the Phillies are facing Patrick Corbin. Corbin's actually been a little bit better recently. He's been using fewer four sinkers and fewer four seamers with more sinkers and sliders over his past 5 starts. Strike rate's 25%. He's had a lot of soft matchups in that time, so I would not say no to the Phillies by any means, but just keep that in mind. We've seen some slight improvements for the peripherals for Patrick Corbin recently. Let's pull up the Phillies lineup here. Oh, Freddie Galvis. Okay. He's back with the Phillies. I actually used Galvis a couple times earlier this year when he was with the Orioles. So had some decent numbers. This is a really bad lineup for Philly, though. Like, really bad. Not having Rhys Hoskins in there, not having J.J. Real. I mean, not obviously Hoskins done for the year, but like not having those like good dudes in there is pretty tough. So I could probably be okay with Galvis as like a salary saver. Let's see what Galvis looks like against lefties. I think the time when I was using him this year was more so against righties when he was with Baltimore. But let's look at the numbers against lefties and see what we can see there. With old Freddie, 88 plate appearances, 207 ISO. That's actually not too bad. So I would say Galvis as a one-off. Galvis, there we go. $2,200. I think that works. So, Kyle, there's a way you can get that opening at second base or shortstop as opposed to third base. Freddie Galvis could be a value play there. I think the rest of that lineup, pretty tough to feel good about. So, Galvis, a solid one-off for me, John, there. DJ, do I keep riding Ryan Mountcastle, or do you think he's going to slump against Hyun-Jin Ryu? Hyun-Jin Ryu is a guy I was okay stacking against a bit earlier on this year. This is his past 9 starts with more velocity. The batted ball suppression has not gotten back to where it was. The strikeout rate's kind of low. I would say the Orioles are not like a super high-ranking team for me today, DJ. And I just don't think I'm going to stack them, which means I'm probably not going to get to Mountcastle. But I don't think it's the worst spot. So if you have a one-off situation where you can get to Mountcastle and you like him, go ahead. I don't think that's a I don't think it's a match we need to avoid, but I would also say the Orioles are not a team looking to stack, which means I probably will not be there personally. Savant has been in a losing streak this whole week, sadly, but I will keep on going. What's the best stacks for single entry today? Savant, I know you had asked me on Twitter too about scoring, and I forgot to respond. My bad. I'll get back to that later on. But if I can answer it here instead, because I apologize, I did forget to respond to it. I read tweets and then forget to respond. My bad, Savant. Didn't mean to ignore you there. What I would say is if you're trying to maximize your score is similar to what we were talking about before. Try not to have duds in your lineup. And that's kind of a dilemma for me for today because I will be stacking the Twins. And that means I'm looking at the Twins lineup. That means that I'll see Luis Arraez batting leadoff, and Arraez, $2,300, doesn't have the best upside. So that's going to make it a situation where I'd like to avoid him. I want to give myself chances at identifying guys who can just blow up Savant. So that means prioritizing power hitters and guys who can steal bases. Just try to identify upside. Those are the two ways to get upside in daily fantasy, is via power, via stolen bases. So like a guy like David Fletcher, for example, not a lot of power there, not a lot of stolen base upside. Tough to talk yourself into him. DJ LeMahieu has some power, but not like the biggest power guy. So Savant, what I would say is try to avoid guys who don't have a good ceiling. Look at their game logs, see if they've had like a 20 to 30 point game recently. And if you can't find games where they're exceeding like 15 or so points, don't use them. 15 points is not enough as a ceiling to be viable for DFS. So I would say just try to identify guys who have ceilings at every single spot. That may mean you're using guys who have bad floors, but every hitter has a bad floor for DFS. Every hitter's floor is 0, and their odds of reaching is pretty similar. So just try to sell out for upside. We don't want to use guys who are singles hitters. That's a rough way to play DFS. So just sell out for upside, Savant. That should help, hopefully, because they can help make up for mistakes you make elsewhere. Clint says, I missed the second part of Savant's question. What's the best stacks for single entry for today? So for single entry, I want to get up to the high salary pitchers. So I'm probably going Lucas Giolito, just going to take the best matchup there and feel good about him. So if I go Giolito at 10-2, I do have some flexibility in terms of stacking. So I would say the Blue Jays and the Twins are probably going to be the best ones. The Jays have some value guys, have not seen their lineup as of yet, but I know the Jays have been pretty disappointing recently offensively, but facing a lefty, I feel better with them than I do against a righty. So I think it's an upgrade for today. So I'd say the Jays and the Twins are the two places I'd want to go. Savant, well, good luck to you. I hope that things turn around for you today. Clint, Lucas Giolito has had his stuff together as of late. Roster him and McCullers. I agree. He's definitely had his stuff together. He's been leaning more on a slider recently. This is over his past 6 starts, a 29% strikeout rate, 3.22 skill interactive ERA, good batted ball data, low walk rate. He's amazing. He's facing the Pirates. I would say, Clint, you use Giolito and don't look back. McCullers, I would say, is probably about 4th-ish for me today. I like Giolito. Love Walker Buehler as well. I am on board with using Brandon Woodruff against the Giants. I know it's a tough matchup, but he's really good. So I would be okay with Woodruff. And then McCullers probably next up above Morton. So McCullers is an option for sure, Clint, but I put Giolito pretty healthily above him. Let's talk to Diffuse over on YouTube. Top-notch value throughout the A's lineup and a high upside spot against Skubal and company with wins blowing out. Thoughts? Skubal's been pretty good recently from a plate discipline perspective. This is over his past 10 starts since his movement stabilized, a 26% strikeout rate, 4% walk rate. But he has been letting up a lot of balls in play. Letting up some hard contact with a 44% hard hit rate. So I think that you at least have some leeway to consider guys facing him. Let's look at the results against Skubal here recently in that 10-start sample and see if we've gotten some dingers against him, because if so, that may mean that the A's would be a bit more viable here. 3.61 ERA, no real bad blow-up games recently, but also has faced some lower tier teams. Did well against Boston. I would say the A's are not super high on my list personally. Looking at that lineup, maybe you can go at some of these guys lower in the order to get that value there, but I would say they're not a big priority for me personally, just because I think Skubal's actually pretty good. I'm very okay with him. Let's talk to Grim Fan Asking Aaron, were you asking about third base? Oh, you're asking about third base. Oh, so you're asking about Sanchez and Velasquez. I'm wondering if that's what you were asking about for today. Let's see here. Scroll down here. Yeah, Velasquez, not a big power dude for the most part. Pretty rough. He can have good days, but can he have great days? I wouldn't really want to go there. So that's why I'm not super into Velasquez, I should say. Yeah, I think that's the main downside for me. Mateo, tonight I am using a mix of Tampa Bay and the Yankees with Snell as my pitcher, so let's hope for the best. Yeah, Snell I think is interesting too. Didn't talk about him before when I was ranking them. Probably should have though, because getting a lot of strikeouts recently. He has a 33% strikeout rate over his past 7 starts. That is with more forcing fastballs and more sliders. Facing a pretty rough Arizona team. I will say they're much better versus lefties and righties, and they have seen Snell quite a bit recently. And one of those starts, he lit them up, though. He just torched them to the ground. So even though they've seen him recently, it doesn't mean we have to avoid him. That's the reason I'd prioritize Buehler and Giolito over him. And the salary gap between him and Giolito is not that big. So I think Snell's an option, Mateo. He's got upside for sure, but that's why I'm a bit lower on him. Also, a lot of walks and a lot of hard contact. That's the main drawback there. Tampa, they definitely work, as mentioned before, facing Peacock. I'd expect it to be a bullpen game, which does lower them a bit, but they're still fine. The Yankees facing Jaime Barria, definitely on board there. So I think that one works for you. Mateo, nothing I would object to too much there. Should be good to go. Matthew, let's talk to Matthew on YouTube. Hey, buddy, would you prefer Vasquez or Stassi, who hits really well at home? Also, do you like Rooker as a sneaky cheap value with Donaldson versus Davies? Starting with the last question, Matthew, I do like Rooker. He's got some good power. Facing Davies, he's been lining up a lot of hard contact recently. That used to be a strength of his. It is not right now. So I do like Rooker. He's a pretty good option. Stassi facing Tyone. Tyone's lining up a lot of fly balls recently, not getting a ton of strikeouts. I could see Stassi being an option, assuming that he does catch today. See the lineup here for the Angels. If it's out, did I scroll past them? No, I did not. Okay, let's refresh this here. Probably not out yet, but if Stassi plays, I could see the value in using him. Velasquez again, or Vasquez. Oh, Christian Vasquez, my bad. Okay, so Christian Vasquez hasn't had good power this year. I know you're citing the BVP data, but that probably stems back to last year. That's the reason I don't tend to look at batted ball or batter versus pitcher data, because it looks at previous seasons, and Christian Vasquez hasn't had power this year. His ISO versus lefties is 0.93. So Vasquez, pretty easy cross off for me. I'm okay with Stassi. Among those options, though, I do like Rooker the most. Grim fan, whoever asked about third base, look at Patrick Wisdom. Yeah, I mean, I think that the Cubs are fine against John Gant because Gant's not a guy we need to avoid. Wisdom's a bit higher than the cutoff, I'd assume. He is $3,600, so a lot higher salary than we were looking at. We were looking at $23 or lower. I could be okay with some one-offs in the Cubs in general because Gant is not a shutdown guy, just tougher to get to a full stack because the Cubs are pretty bad. Scott, what do you think about Skubal tonight? Helps me get the big bats that I want. So I did mention that I'm not looking to use bats against Skubal, but I'm also not looking to use him as my pitcher because I do respect the A's quite a bit. They're a good team. Against lefties, the A's have a 105 WRC plus, a low strikeout rate of 21%. So that's why I'm not super into Skubal. Let's see what the salary is here for Skubal to see if I can find you a replacement option. He's really low. Did I miss him? I probably did. He is 9,000. Okay. So if you want a lower salary guy, Scott, I know that the results have not been good for Zach Gallen, but I do like him. He gets strikeouts. He still scored fine recently, despite letting up some earned runs because he gets strikeouts. So I would go Gallen over Skubal for today. And if you don't want to go Gallen, I would try to find the salary to get to McCullers. I like him more. I like Snell more. And then Giolito up here as well. So some guys in that range, at least, if you still want to load up on the big bats. Let's talk to Ian Nev over on Twitch. Got caught in an ad. What's popular? Yeah, I had that issue on Twitch too. I finally broke down and subbed to a couple things because I was like, I don't want to deal with these ads. So I get it. For good things today at pitcher, I like Lucas Giolito a lot. I like Walker Buehler as a secondary tournament play. And then for a value play, I like Zach Gallen, but I'd rank McCullers and Snell above him for today. As far as stacks, I like the Yankees. I like the Twins. I like the Blue Jays. Blue Jays a lot. Blue Jays are the top stack for me. Blue Jays, Twins, Yankees, going to grade out pretty well for me. Other options we have not talked about yet in terms of stacking. I like the Astros against Yusei Kikuchi. I like Kikuchi a lot, just not against the Astros. A low strikeout team. Kikuchi struggles when he can't get the strikeouts. Might not get them today just because the Astros are really, really good. So I would say Kikuchi in general, yes. Kikuchi today, no. And that does put me on the Astros for tonight. So Astros in there for stacking as well. Matthew also asked, do you prefer Woodruff or Snell regardless of salary? If I'm not considering salary, I would go Woodruff. I just feel better about the overall profile. I know the matchup is a lot tougher for Woodruff facing the Giants, but I just feel better about him as a pitcher than I do about Snell. Snell lets up a lot of walks, lets up a lot of hard contact. That might be stupid to go with Woodruff over Snell, but I feel better about him overall. Savan says, Stanton home run, ? Yeah. Berea has had okay batted ball data, but doesn't get a lot of strikeouts. Stanton's stupid good. So yes, I'm on board with that for today. And then also asking, how would you stack Minnesota for today? Okay, the lineup is out. So let's check out that lineup for the Twins. I believe it was out when I last refreshed. Let's go over here and actually check it out with the salaries over on the glorious FanDuel.com. I'm going to put Brent Rooker in there first because I want those salary savings that he gets me. To do that, again, with Arise, I really don't want to use him because the upside is pretty limited. But he at least is capable of having okay games. We pull up the game log here and scroll back. He had a 30-point game there, 20 points there. He can have good games. I'm not expecting it to happen. But if I want to get to other guys in this stack, want to get to some of the more viable options here, I might need to take a swing at Arise. It's not something I want to do, but I will. And if you know me, you know the fourth guy here, Byron Buxton. He's back, baby. He had a hard hit ball yesterday, $3,700, dirtiest hitter alive, best hitter in baseball, future MVP. We'll put him in there. So this is my twin stack for you, Savan, for today. DJ is asking Ortega or Hayward for the Cubs. He probably tried to avoid. I'd go Ortega if you want to choose between those two. Savan, the Tampa Bay Stadium is easy to smack out home runs. It's actually a pretty low one in terms of overall. It's better during the colder months, and it is a little bit colder for today relative to what it's been during the summer months. So if it's colder elsewhere, bump up Tampa Bay. If it's not colder, bump it down. Savan, what does OPS mean? That is on base plus slugging. Not a great number for DFS because, frankly, we don't care about on base percentage in DFS because walks are cool for the real world. They're not as cool for daily fantasy because it's just 3 points. It can lead to some other stuff, but I prefer just slugging or just ISO. Personally, it's just ISO is the way I want to go because I just want to sell it for power. And ISO allows me to do that. Scott, Red Sox hitters have great numbers against Yarbrough. What do you think about stacking the Red Sox? Not opposed, I would say, because Yarbrough, he always has really bad velocity, just chucking up 63 mile per hour cutters. It's been especially bad recently. Just came off the COVID IL, a lot of fly balls, low strikeout rate. He's still been good at suppressing our contact. That's why the Red Sox are not super high on my list, but they do work. And I think that they're okay. I would not go to Vasquez. I know we had a question about him before. Would not go there, but Bobby Dahlbeck has been otherworldly. Dahlbeck against a low strikeout pitcher, sick. Sign me up. If you need a one-off, I think that works pretty well. So, Scott, I'm not opposed, I would say. DJ, how do you feel about a 1-4 stack of the Royals against Cleveland? Plesac's been pretty bad. 1-4 are kind of the main guys on the Royals who are okay with. Nicky Lopez has been good this year, which is kind of weird. I do want to look at his advanced numbers, though, to make sure that's not just a good real world thing and make sure it's a good DFS thing. Lopez in the past was someone who I never really wanted to turn to, but we don't want to base that off of old data. 068 ISO. So I would try to skip over Lopez if you can. Olivares is batting 7th. He's got some power. So I might jump down to 7th, DJ, get Edward Olivares in there if you need a value play. I could get behind him more so than I could get behind Lopez. I know he's been good, but just not a high upside day or a guy for DFS. Let's talk to Renee. What do you think about Gomber versus Texas? I think Gomber is a very good pitcher, and I think Texas is a great matchup to utilize. The downside with Gomber is nothing to do with him. It's just about pitch count. We've seen the Rockies kind of limit some of their guys recently, and Gomber recently, I know he just came out the IL, but even the more recent starts, 86, 88, 78. I'm not sure how long to let him go. If you told me Austin Gomber will go 100 pitches, I'd feel pretty good about him. I just can't guarantee that. So that's the downside for me with Gomber for today. Jerry says, good day, Jim. Sorry, just joined. Did you see the lineups once again? Went the other way again. Anyway, how do you think Corbin will do? Not super high on him. Doesn't get enough strikeouts. I know he's been better recently. We did talk about that, but I think we've got better options. So I'd avoid him and go some elsewhere. Ian Nev is asking why. I'm guessing Blue Jays. I'm assuming that's Blue Jays and nothing nefarious out of you, Ian Nev. They're facing Keegan Aiken. Aiken doesn't get a lot of strikeouts, lets up a lot of fly balls. I know the Blue Jays have been very frustrating recently. I have been on them, so it has not been super enjoyable. But I think that they make a lot of sense here once again. I would say Alejandro Kirk if he plays, Randall Grichuk if he plays, as far as values go. But then also Kevin Martin is kind of not bad, or Kevin Smith, I should say, if he plays. Minimum salary, had good numbers in AAA. So Smith, Kirk, Grichuk, all those guys could be some value options for today on the Blue Jays. Savon, Houston, Barley wins games, so it's so embarrassing. Not sure what Barley is. Houston barely wins game. Okay, yeah, I got you. There we go. Julius is asking for the top 2 pitchers tonight. I want Giolito and I want Buehler, and I want them bad. So I'm spending up Julius for today, trying to get to those 2 top guys. Matthew, I needed a lower salary bet to run on my lineup. Thoughts on Joe Adele or Hunter Dozier? Don't mind the matchup for Dozier. So I could be okay with that. Adele has been okay recently. I'd probably go Dozier, but I would say other low salary bats in general. Check out the Blue Jays guys. Talk about Kevin Smith. It's a very generic name. Kevin Smith, Alejandro Kirk, Randall Grichuk. Check out Brent Rooker as being a potential option there as well. Should have some good value for today. Jerry, what are your favorite under the radar stacks? Let's go over here and check out the implied totals for today to see who should be popular, and then see who we can go to who doesn't fit that. Let's go here. Okay. So we can expect Toronto to be popular, the White Sox to be popular, the Yankees to be popular, and the Twins. If we lop off those options, I would say the Rays are okay, facing Peacock/Richards. I don't mind the Tigers if you're looking like more super under the radar, and then the Astros. Astros and Tigers are kind of interesting. Irvin hasn't been getting a lot of strikeouts recently. We saw the Astros beat up on Kikuchi a couple starts ago. So if you're looking for some like more deeper type teams, Jerry, I would say Houston and Detroit are 2 teams who I like more than what their implied totals say we should like them at. Jerry says best hitting park for today versus downgrade for pitchers. Okay, so best hitting park for today, probably going to be Nationals Park in Washington. High temperature for today, good park in general, so maybe that bumps up. If Ryan Zimmerman is playing today, could use him as a one-off potentially. If he's in there, let's refresh the Nationals lineup, and it's not out yet. Maybe some Nationals one-offs potentially, some Phillies one-offs. Harper's good against lefties, so that's not a concern there. Again, Galvis I think is okay too. So I would check out some one-offs, and the weather is not as concerning there as it was this morning, so it should be good to go. Maybe Galvis, maybe Zimmerman if he plays. Guys like that could work out for sure. Dan, hi, Jim. I do have a rise in my stack. Should I swap out Galvis? It's a good question, Dan. I would say if you're stacking the Twins, I would stick with a rise. If you are not stacking the Twins, and it sounds like you are, but let's say hypothetically you're not stacking the Twins, just a pure one-off, I might go Galvis over a rise just because I feel like Galvis has better single game upside. So in your Twin stack, stick with a rise. If you're not stacking Twins, I would go Galvis. Jerry says, I'll stack lefties yesterday against Yarborough. Okay, so Schwarber, Devers, and Verdugo. Yeah, okay. I think that Yarborough's not overpowering enough for us to care too much about lefty versus lefty. So, Jerry, I think that's okay. Savon, Salvador Perez home run? Yep. Every day, Savon. Every day. Salvador, all he does is hit home runs. So, yes. All right, DJ's home run calls. Yasmani Grandal, he was also a home run call in the solo shot this morning, so I like that. Heimer Candelario and Colton Wong. Less so on board with those, but I do like Yasmani Grandal. I think that Salvador Perez is pretty good. Jackie is reminding us it is Dinger Tuesday. Okay. It's Dinger Tuesday. Welcome, Jackie. If we're trying to build that bankroll back up, I would say Grandal is probably a pretty good option depending on where he's hitting. I might look at some Twins home run props. I've not seen their prices yet, but in terms of home run props, but maybe some Twins against Zach Davies. That could work out pretty well. And other places for some potential home run props, depending on the Rockies numbers, maybe Rockies could be fun too. Yeah, I need a good number, but I wouldn't throw them out of consideration. Final question from Jerry, who is pitching for Boston for today. Sounds like it is Brad Peacock to start. And then I would have guessed that Garrett Richards comes out at some point. Peacock's probably going to go 2 innings, Jerry. So you'll look at Peacock's numbers in AAA and see we want to sack against him. But he's probably just going to go a couple innings. So I wouldn't worry too much about that one there. Jerry says Rowdy Tellez, Bryce Harper, and then Dahlbeck. Dahlbeck is awesome as a home run pick. I do like that one, Jerry. And then DJ has Mountcastle going deep. That is all that we have here for today on the FanDuel Live Q&A. But as mentioned, if you want to get some more golf talk, check out our Heat Check Fantasy podcast with myself and Brandon Gdula. We broke down the Tour Championship from a DFS perspective. Also did talk some betting in there. Find that by searching for the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed wherever you get your podcasts. If you've got more questions for me, I am on Twitter at Jim Sannes, JimSannes. Big thank you to Joy Affleck, our video producer, for running the video side of things here today. Thank you, Joy, as always. And thank you to everyone for tuning in for today. We'll talk to you once again tomorrow right here, same place, same time. We'll see you all then. This has been the FanDuel Live Q&A.